Hello everybody, and welcome to the Anything But Silent Cinema podcast. I'm your host, Cody, coming to you live from the bedroom floor, and this podcast is going to begin covering the emergence of cinema and silent films, and how this eventually led to the overtaking of traditional art forms like theater and how this impacted the economy. Today's first episode is going to begin covering cost of inputs and technology and why this helped aid in the downfall of theater. Now, the first silent film that we have is Rundere Garden Scene, recorded in 1888. This was created by some random French guy. I'm not going to even begin trying to pronounce his name. However, it was a pretty decent commercial success at its first screening, and this is kind of the beginning of showing people that cinema was this cool, great technology, even if they were, these very short, very brief ideas, such as a simple conversation in a garden, some slapstick humor. But Cody, I hear none of you asking, well, how is a simple, 20-second or maybe a minute-long film showing people how cool technology is? Well, the turn of the century, meaning from the 1800s to the 1900s, many were interested in how the world would shift, how the world would change, and how technology would continue to grow, and these motion picture cameras, rather than just a standard single frame camera, being used as a concept for entertainment and for creating works of art and expression, really began to capture public attention. And this technology is something new, it's something insane. People are used to maybe going to the theater, going to the opera, and having to see live actors, but now all of a sudden you get to see this film played in front of you onto the screen, and it could have been recorded anywhere from a year ago to a month ago to, heck, it could have been recorded yesterday even. And that's honestly, we take that for granted now, but that's an extremely amazing idea to think of back then, playing into that. Also, the technology, projectors were around long before then, but they were used to display these pictures in these cinemas, which amazed people in the time. We're talking the very late 1800s, very early 1900s, that cinemas began to emerge due to cinematic films being produced. And obviously, they're not going to begin dedicating these businesses to showing and displaying these films if it's not commercially viable, I talk about it like this was way back before dinosaurs, but the 1800s and the shifting to the 1900s was really a rapid change in technology and the such. I don't even know how to really put it myself, but it was just a rapid change in technology. Not to mention that people kind of began shifting away from theater. Not only was theater more expensive to go see, theater was more expensive to produce overall. If I'm going to put on a play, I need to pay somebody for the rights to put on a show or write it myself. I need to pay them for that. I need to pay actors. I need to pay for costumes, props, and then pay for a theater, lease out a theater space to display, to enact my show. And then not to mention after, when it's 10 years down the line, nobody wants to see my play anymore. I need to either sell off my props, or I need to destroy them, throw them away, or I need to put them in storage, which is annoying. It's a hassle. While cinema, I have to pay for all the equipment. Maybe I rent it. I rent my camera, I go out and I buy a bunch of film, and I pay Joe Schmo, who decides he wants to be in a brand new motion picture. I pay him, a couple pennies every hour. Because it's 1800, nobody gets paid anything. I pay him, and maybe I film him stubbing his toe, or let's say the slapstick stepping on a rake. And then I take that out, and I go and I get my film produced, and I make a few copies, and I go I'm able to display it in a theater. Maybe I'll pay the theater a certain amount. Let's say that. I'll pay them for every screening, so that way they'll show my movie. That's still nowhere really near as expensive as putting on a full-fledged theatrical production. Even if you take into the factors of developing film, paying for equipment, cameras, lighting, and all this wasn't high technology. I mean, it was for the time, but they didn't really use a ton of specialty lighting and sound effects because these were silent films, which meant that overall it was really not super easy. Obviously, you would still need maybe outsider funding, but it began showing people that, hey, there's another form of entertainment for the masses, that doesn't have to be perfect, that we can reshoot it. You can't reshoot when an actor on stage messes up a line. You just have to kind of keep rolling and hope the audience doesn't notice. Whereas, if Joe Schmo messes up his line, I can say cut, we can cut that out, and we can get a new shot, a new scene. And it just creates this tidal wave that we begin to see in the world, where theater is suddenly becoming less viable, it's seemingly outdated, and this new modern form of entertainment begins to take hold on the industry. So as cinema begins emerging into this ever-changing world, it kind of begins pushing theater to the side. Theater's no longer the mainstream way to get an idea or a theme across. But, whilst really going to the cinema is, why put on a play about heartbreak when I can put on a little motion picture on the same idea? Be able to reach far more people for a much cheaper price. If I put on a play for $1 about Romeo and Juliet, a lot of people might go see it. But if I go and I put on, let's say, a movie on the same idea, maybe a bit shorter, and I charge a penny, a lot of people are going to come to that, maybe fish out a penny out of their pocket or even pick one off the floor and be like, here you go. Which means I might make a lot more money from a bunch of people coming to my showing of the film rather than a play. Because overall, once you factor in the costs of everything, like actors and as such, you're really not making that much more. So cinema really begins to kind of become the predominant form of entertainment in society. And that means that it's cheaper to make, it's cheaper to produce, and it's this new technology. It's new, it's fancy, it excites people. It excites the masses to come begin seeing these new silent pictures. Not to eventually mention when the first audio pictures are created, the first motion pictures with sound. It's even better. Now I don't have to have a frame that says crash. I can play the sound of the crash or the explosion. I can have my actors talking, which is even better, because now we directly have a rival to theater. But I thank you all for listening. That's all we're going to go over for today. Please tune in next time. And quickly, just before we leave out, we're going to go over a little bit of cinema history. Did y'all know that Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet sold for $5.3 million, whereas the Batmobile from Batman only ended up selling for 4.6. Tin Man ended up selling more than the Batmobile. Think about that. But I've been Cody. This has been Anything But Silent Films. Wishing you all a good day.